All right, welcome to Big Time Basketball, the basketball segment of the Fantasy Fanatics Podcast. I'm your host once again, James, and I'm joined once again by Mete and Nate. What's up, guys?
So,
Yo.
All right, in today's episode, we're going to hop right back into some division previews. We're going to talk about all the fantasy relevant players from the Central Division. And then after that, we'll just hop right into projecting the division standings, just see where all the teams are probably going to fall. I guess when the season starts, sort of projecting and predicting things. So let's just get right into it. I guess, Mete, I'm going to start with you. We'll start with the defending NBA champions, Milwaukee Bucks. I think that's a good place to start. Yeah, they looked great all the way through the playoffs. I guess just talk about this team from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, so the fantasy relevant players, I think, on the Bucks. Let's start with the point guard, Drew Holiday. He's one of the best defenders in the league. Great mid-round pickup, I'd say, in fantasy drafts. Outside of his defense, he isn't really elite at anything, but he also has no weaknesses, so he's pretty much solid at everything. So great fantasy player. Dante DiVincenzo, their starting shooting guard before his injury. Solid 3-and-D guy. He's now entering his fourth year, and he's only 24, so he could develop into something more than a 3-and-D guy, but at the moment, I can't see that happening with the current Bucks team. So I draft him late rounds in drafts. And then Chris Middleton, they're starting small forwards, great scorer, solid rebound and passer. So he's a valuable guy to have for fantasy basketball. He doesn't give you the greatest defensive numbers, but he covers almost every category. So he's probably going to be gone by round 3 of drafts. So if you want him, you got to pick him up kind of early. And then there's Giannis Antetokounmpo, 2-time MVP, 1-time Defensive Player of the Year, one of the best players in the league by far. And then he's going to be picked first round in pretty much all leagues. So yeah, if you want him, you got to get him round 1. Not much to say. His 3-pointers, free throws, and turnovers could frustrate you, but I mean, outside of those 3 categories, he's pretty much elite in everything. So definitely worth a gamble. Not even a gamble, just worth a look. Brook Lopez, their starting center, Splash Mountain, they call him now. He's changed his game from back to the basket guy who's pretty much always under the rim to a guy who's always on the perimeter now, spacing the floor for Giannis. So yeah, he's got a great shot, tremendous shot blocker. So yeah, definitely fantasy relevant. Probably later in drafts, you can get him near like the double-digit rounds. And then for their bench player, I really didn't trust many of their bench players right now. I'm not too sure what their roles are going to be, but the one guy I could trust off the bench is Bobby Portis. I mean, I feel like Bobby Portis is a starter caliber player in this league, and just because he's a bench player, don't be scared to draft him. He's got game for sure. He was huge for the Bucks championship run, and he's a big man who can stretch the floor, so that's amazing for fantasy. And then the rookie, I went with Sandro Mamukelov. I'm not even gonna try saying that.
Yeah,
It's
no
a really
worries,
hard
man.
name. Yeah, I mean, he's the rookie out of Georgia. He's gonna be an interesting player. Can stretch the floor at the center position, and as of now, I wouldn't draft him. He's got Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis ahead of him in the depth chart. So yeah, I feel like at the start of the season, he's gonna have a hard time cracking the rotation, but if he does, definitely keep an eye out for him. Big men who can shoot threes is very critical for fantasy.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely something to, I guess, keep a lookout for. As the season goes along, there's always injuries, there's always other things. So definitely you want to maybe put him on your watch list. But I guess, Nate, I'll just bounce to you. The next team in this division we'll talk about is the Cleveland Cavaliers. I guess just talk to us about them for fantasy.
I guess I'll start with Darius Garland. He's a pretty good point guard. He's going to be the starter for the Cavaliers this year, I believe. He's pretty good all around. He can score decently well. He can pass decently well. He's a good shooter. He defends pretty well as well. So yeah, pretty good all around. I think he's gonna be drafted maybe late in drafts. I believe his average draft position was like 185, if I remember correctly. So you shouldn't have to worry about like reaching for him though. But if he's there, you can definitely take a look at him. And I guess next I'll talk about Colin Sexton. He's the starting shooting guard of the Cavaliers. He's probably going to go pretty early in drafts. Scores a lot. Really good defender as well. Really good shooter. He can pass a little bit as well. So yeah, definitely take a look at him if you have the chance. And I guess there's also Kevin Love and Jarrett Allen. I think Kevin Love, he's pretty decent still, even though he's not really the same as he used to be. But I think if he's fully healthy, then it might be worth taking a chance on him. But because of his injury history, you might want to take him like later, maybe like with your last few picks. And he's kind of like a player that he'll have a lot of reward, but there's a little bit of risk because he could end up being on your IR spot for a few months. So yeah, that's kind of the trouble with Kevin Love. Jarrett Allen, he's also pretty good. Gets a lot of rebounds. He's a good defender. He's a good free throw shooter for a center, so that's good as well. And plays a lot of minutes. He's in for a lot of games. So yeah, that's pretty good. And I guess some other players that you might want to look out for, I guess Ricky Rubio. He's not going to be a starter, but I think he wasn't a starter for Minnesota last year, and he still played 24 minutes a game, and he still managed to get 6 assists, which for Ricky Rubio isn't that great, but for point guards overall, it's pretty decent. And I think Ricky Rubio was also pretty decent in steals as well. I think he averaged something like 1.2 steals or something like that. And you could also maybe look at Lauri Markkanen. And I was thinking about Isaac Okoro as well. I guess he's also a starter, so I think he's projected to be a starter, so he should be getting a lot of exposure, but I wouldn't draft him too early. And I guess for rookies, there's Evan Mobley.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned Evan Mobley. Obviously, they have Jarrett Allen there. I guess Mobley is sort of that next center coming in since Drummond's now gone. Obviously, they bring Markkanen in, like you mentioned. Yeah, this team's gonna look different. They actually are gonna look better just by looking at this roster. So I think you can trust a lot of these players going forward in fantasy. I'm gonna take a look at the Chicago Bulls. This team also had a crazy makeover. I'll go through sort of the starting lineup for guys in fantasy. I'll start with Nikola Vucevic because he is going the earliest in drafts right now out of Chicago players. He's going late first round, early second round. He has just center eligibility. Obviously, we know how valuable bigs are in fantasy. I still feel like he's going kind of early because when he did get to Chicago, his production sort of dipped from when it was in Orlando. I think you just need to be careful that you're not reaching for him. He definitely should be going in the second round, probably not the first round. Guys like Bradley Beal and others should be going ahead of him. These are guys that I'm looking at that are actually going below him. Yeah, not Zach Levine. That's my next guy, but Vucevic. He just seems like a guy that he's good, but there are other players that should be going ahead of him. So definitely keep an eye on that. Now I'll get to Zach Levine. He also should be going second round. He's probably the best fantasy option. on this team, if I'm being honest. The only reason Vucevic is going ahead of him is because he's a big. Zach LaVine, pretty much, he's one of the more efficient shooting guards in the league. He can also play small forward eligibility as well in fantasy. His production could take a dip with other guys coming in, but from what we've seen from him so far, he is clearly one of the best players on this team. So he definitely needs to be looked at for fantasy. And then we got DeMar DeRozan coming in. Obviously, as a shooting guard last year, he was really solid. Now he doesn't have that eligibility. He's just small forward and power forward. So I guess just looking at him, he's one of those guys that he's not going to shoot a lot of threes. His percentages will still be really good because of him going to the hoop a lot. He's great at the line as well for the most part. He's just one of those guys that he's just solid for fantasy. You could probably get him, I'd say maybe like 4th round, 5th round, just depending on your draft. That's probably the target area to take him. You don't want to reach for him just because we don't know how this wealth is going to be spread among the Chicago lineup. You got Lonzo Ball as well. He's one of the more category coverage point guards / shooting guards in fantasy. He's like one of those guys that's like borderline triple double a lot of nights just because he can rebound. He's a big guard. He gets a lot of assists and he'll put up, around 10 points or so. So yeah, you're always looking at that factor with him. Obviously, there's a lot of good players on this team, as we mentioned, so you don't want to be reaching for him. He might go ahead of DeRozan in certain formats, but yeah, just keep an eye out for Lonzo. And then I guess the final starter here is probably going to be Patrick Williams. He can play a small forward and power forward as well, just like DeRozan. Yeah, he's one of those guys that's going to benefit from playing with this big starting 4 that they have. And yeah, he's still relatively young. He can still, continue to get better. Obviously, you're not taking him as early as the other 4. You're going to wait a little bit, probably grab him, I don't know, maybe a 7th, 8th round, maybe even further than that, just depending on where he's going in drafts. I haven't seen the exact number, but you definitely look out for him as he'll be getting the minutes. And then I guess for 6th man on this team or 7th man, there's no clear guy. So I'll just mention a few guys that I like. Kobe White, he has been pretty relevant in the past for fantasy for this team. He plays point guard and shooting guard. He's very athletic. Just watching him play. If they do give him minutes, he is going to produce. Definitely look for him. They brought in Alex Caruso from the LA Lakers. He also plays point guard, shooting guard. Definitely a guy that when they give him minutes, he makes the most of them. So he's definitely another guy you can take a look at. Derek Jones Jr. they bring in. I believe that was in that 3-way trade that they made with Markkanen, I believe. And we don't know how many minutes he's going to get. He's still relatively young as well. So he could definitely develop into that sort of 6th or 7th man. And then, of course, Tony Bradley there at center. Obviously, they're going to need a change of pace guy for Vucevic at points during the game. So definitely a guy that you should just keep an eye on. And then for rookies, they only had 1 draft pick this year. It was a 2nd rounder. I think you pronounce his name Ayo Dosunmu or something like that. He plays point guard. He's probably not going to see a lot of minutes. There's a lot of guards on this team. Obviously, Zach LaVine, Lonzo Ball, Kobe White, Alex Caruso, Derek Jones. There's just too many guys there. It's going to be really tough for him to get minutes early on. Obviously, it's going to have to take an injury for him to get in. But I guess he's the main rookie that you should, keep an eye on for the Chicago Bulls. Mete, I'm going to jump back to you now. We'll talk about the Detroit Pistons. I guess just talk about this team for fantasy.
Yeah, so fantasy relevant players, I think for the Pistons would be Killian Hayes for one. I think he's going to be the starting point guard or one of the guards in Detroit. He had a rough season last year, but he dealt with a lot of injuries, and later on in the year he got better, and I think he's going to continue to improve. And then I'd say the worst part about his game was his efficiency. He only shot 35% from the field and he averaged 3.2 turnovers. So those are pretty rough numbers and he's got to improve those for sure. And then Cade Cunningham, I'm thinking he's the other guard, point guard or shooting guard, doesn't matter. First overall pick in the 2021 draft. Expectations are really high for him as he's expected to be the franchise player in Detroit now, and he's got to turn that franchise around. Definitely worth a mid-round draft pick. So for standard leagues, I'd say like round 5 latest I can see him go, and then 4 or 3 earliest, but anything before that is I think a reach. So yeah, it's always a risk drafting rookies, but there's also a huge reward if the risk pays off. So yeah, I mean, Cunningham, he's a day one starter and he's in a situation where he's probably going to be the number one guy from the start. So I think this is a gamble worth I think it's worth taking a gamble on Cade Cunningham, and then Sadiq Bey third. I think he'll be the starting small forward there, entering sophomore year. Had a really good rookie year, I'd say. Great upside. Solid 3 and D guy. So definitely look out for him. He should be drafted, I'd say later on in the draft. And then Jeremy Grant, who had a huge breakout year, became a walking bucket. Outside of his elite scoring, though, he put up not the greatest numbers. And with the arrival of Cade Cunningham, I don't think he's going to have the same success as he had last season. So he's still a great player, but just temper your expectations with him and try not to reach for him this year. I think if you draft him anywhere before like round 8, I think is too early. And then Isaiah Stewart, sophomore coming off a great rookie year. I was really impressed with what I saw from Isaiah Stewart. He was doing pretty much everything. Amazing defending. I think he can become an elite shot blocker. He shot the 3 ball. He was a beast down low in the paint, grabbing rebounds, scoring easy twos. And yeah, I feel like he's a huge breakout guy this season. I was really disappointed that the Pistons signed Olynyk, as I would have loved to see Stewart be the starter, but nonetheless, draft Isaiah Stewart later on in draft. And then the last guy, Kelly Olynyk. Uh, yeah, like I said, I'm disappointed that the Pistons signed him, as I wanted to see Stewart play a lot of minutes, as I really liked what I saw from him, but I can't really blame the Pistons, as Olynyk, when he got to Houston, he became a different player. He started dropping triple doubles almost every night. And so, yeah, I can't really fault the Pistons for signing him, but I feel like that's not going to happen again. But for fantasy, I think he's still a viable opinion as, or option, sorry, as yeah, like I said, he was dropping triple doubles. He can do pretty much everything. So especially if he's starting too, I feel like he's gonna be the starter. Definitely worth a look later on in the draft. And then yeah, that's pretty much it for the Pistons. I can't really trust their other players, to be honest.
And then yeah, for rookies, I assume it's just Cade Cunningham.
Yeah, Cunningham.
Yeah, for sure. He's definitely a must draft rookie. I know a lot of the rookies for other teams, they're more depth guys, but he's one of those guys. Yeah, if you see him in your draft, you're definitely taking him. I know Mobley's one of those other guys. Nate, you talked about him, obviously, for Cleveland. Nate, I'll just get right back to you next. The last team in this division, the Indiana Pacers. I guess just talk to us about the fantasy relevant players for this team.
There's quite a few players that I think are fantasy relevant. I guess I'll start with Malcolm Brogdon, starting point guard for the Indiana Pacers. Again, really good scorer. He rebounds decently well for a point guard. He's gets a decent amount of assists. He can defend as well. Good shooter. So he's probably gonna be, I guess, drafted earlier. So you might want to get him, like, I guess when you have the chance, maybe in like early rounds. And I guess next I can talk a little bit about Karis LeVert. Is another player that I think is pretty good. You might want to, I guess, try to draft them a little bit later if you have the chance, but kind of depends, because some people might want to take him early if they kind of like his potential. But I guess he does score decently well. I think he had 244 total assists, so that's pretty decent considering he only played for 47 games. He got, I think, 66 steals. His field goal percentage is okay. His 3-point percentage, it could be a little bit better, but I think overall he's a pretty good shooting guard. So yeah, you can definitely take a look at him. And I guess there's Justin Holiday. I think he's the starting small forward. I guess for Justin Holiday, you might want to take him like maybe with your last couple of picks. He does have a good field goal percentage and 3-point percentage, and he is a good defender. So if you need, I guess, a 3-and-D guy, you can take a look at Justin Holiday. Domantas Sabonis, not really too much to say about him. He's really good all around. So, and he's probably gonna be taken early in drafts. So definitely want to take him when you have the chance. And there's also Miles Turner, who's also a really good defender. So if you need some blocks, you can definitely take a look at Miles Turner. And I guess a guy off the bench you might want to take a look at might be TJ McConnell. He's a pretty decent defensive point guard off the bench. So maybe again with like maybe your last picks, or you can even maybe look at your waiver wire. There's a chance that people might not pick him up. So first few weeks, if he's still there and you like his matchups, you can kind of take him. And I think that's kind of where his value is going to be. And I guess for rookies, there's Chris Duarte. There's a chance that he might have some decent minutes, I guess, based on his talent and based on his potential. And I guess just looking at his college stats, it looks like he was a really good scorer. He was a good shooter. He rebounded decently well, and he was a good defender as well. So I feel like there's a chance for him to get some minutes. How many, I'm not exactly sure. So I guess with Chris Duarte, even though he has some potential, you might want to take him more at the tail end of the draft.
Yeah, for sure. I was just wondering, I know it looks like TJ Warren's going to be out like indefinitely. If he does come back, I assume he is going to be the starter at the 3 spot. And I guess if he comes back, what do you think his fantasy relevancy will be? And I guess what about Jeremy Lamb?
I guess TJ Warren, if he comes back, there might be like a few games where he has to kind of like shake off rust. So he might end up getting a little bit less minutes, but I think eventually he might become the starter again if he ends up, I guess, playing like how he did last season before he got injured. So that might end up end up affecting Justin Holiday a little bit. So I guess with Justin Holiday, you might end up wanting to draft him a little bit later if you're anticipating TJ Warren coming back. For Jeremy Lamb, I wasn't really too sure about him, so that's why I didn't really include him. I feel like he might end up having more minutes than Chris Duarte, so there's that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things where if the rookie comes in and he balls out, then Lamb might either have to move to the 3. And then if TJ Warren comes back, obviously he's going to get pushed down a lot further in the depth chart. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on for sure. And then just moving on now to the projected standings for this division. Yeah, I think we all have a similar look, if not the same thing. I guess, Mete, I'll just start with you. I guess what's your projection for this division?
Yeah, so I think the Milwaukee Bucks should be number 1. They're the defending champs, and yeah, this looks like one of the easier divisions in the NBA, so I gotta take them. Number 2, I have Chicago. I really love what they did in the offseason. They brought in Lonzo, DeMar, Alex Caruso. They even brought in Nikola Vucevic last season at the trade deadline. So I think they're making great moves, and I think this is the year they finally get back in the playoffs. And then Pacers at 3, they're solid, but I don't really think they improved too much from last season based off of off-season moves. But I could be wrong. But yeah, I don't think they finished below third in this division. And then Cleveland, I had at 4. Honestly, I'm not too confident with this pick, but yeah, I kind of like their squad more than Detroit at the moment, and I have Detroit at 5. I think they're gonna have another rough season in Detroit, and things will get better in the future, but right now it doesn't look too great. And honestly, 4 and 5 is a toss-up. It could be Detroit 4, Cleveland 5. So yeah, it was kind of tough for me to decide between those two.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely have the same as you, Milwaukee at first, just because they're the defending champs. Um, Assuming Giannis is healthy, they're in first place. The only way they wouldn't be in first place, obviously, is if he got injured or one of their other key guys got hurt and maybe they slip back a little bit. But or else, yeah, they're definitely in first place for me. Yeah, I have Chicago in second as well, just because they brought in a lot of star power. I know the continuity factor isn't as great with them as it is with the Pacers, but I just feel like with all that talent, they've got a lot of depth too. I know I mentioned all these guys that could be the sixth or seventh man there. They have so many guys that we don't know who's going to be the depth guys. So that's a good thing in their case. They're definitely deeper. If there's an injury, they have guys that can slot in, obviously. So I definitely like that about them. Then, yeah, I mentioned I have the Pacers at third. They do have a deep team. They're just battling a lot of injuries. I know Miles Turner's been going through a lot of injuries over the past couple of years. Sabonis has dealt with injuries. You got TJ Warren dealing with injuries. This team just seems to be banged up. They are a good team. They have a lot of good players, like Nate talked about. But yeah, they're just getting injured all the time. So unless they can stay healthy, I can't have them higher than third. And then yeah, I have Cleveland at fourth. Um, I don't know. I'll get to you guys on this after, but I don't know. They seem like they have a lot of good players. They just can't seem to get it done as a team. I'm not sure what it is about them. Their lineup does look solid. They add Mobley in there as well. So we definitely have to see how this team, like they started off really well last season. They looked like they were finally coming together, and then things just sort of fell apart. They went on like an 8-game skid or something crazy like that. Just dropped out of the playoffs. So yeah, I'm not really too sure with this team. Talent wise, yeah, I think they are the fourth best team in this division. But then I have Detroit at 5. Mete, you mentioned how, yeah, this team could surprise people. They could move up in the standings. But I have to see it first, obviously. They have the least amount of depth and experience as all the other teams in this division. So we definitely got to wait and see about them. But I guess, Nate, I'll get to you for your projected standings.
Yeah, so I have pretty much the same teams in the same spots. Milwaukee, number 1, there isn't really too much to say about that. Not only are they the defending champs, but they're always solid every season in terms of the regular season. So there's no reason not to put them number 1, in my opinion. Bulls, they might give the Bucks a run for their money in terms of the season. Maybe there might be a couple of stretches where they get really hot, but the Bulls I think they're going to be really solid this season. Really good starting 5, so put them at number 2. Indiana, they also have a good starting 5, but I feel like the Bulls are a little bit deeper, and I think the Bulls can pull ahead of Indiana. The Cavs, I feel like they're making a lot of progress in terms of rebuilding, but it's kind of like you said, like sometimes they'll be on fire and win a lot of games and play really solid, and then there'll be times where they lose and it's like they're a completely different team. So it's really hard to, I guess, see them higher than 4th because of that. And Detroit, they're still rebuilding. I kind of like the progress that they're going with. So I guess I put them at 5th.
Yeah, for sure. And I guess, Mete, I'll bounce to you on that since you talked about it. I guess, what are your thoughts on Cleveland and I guess their rebuild and I guess them, possibly doing something with their team?
Yeah, like you said, they definitely have talent. I think the problem is most of the guys, they're key guys that have talent. They're all really young, so they're just trying to improve every day, every season. So it's gonna take a while, but yeah, they definitely have talent. It's just a matter of time until they fulfill their potential, I think.
Yeah, they just seem to be one of these teams. They have a lot of young talent. They have a lot of like solid players. Like I know you guys talked about Colin Sexton. You talked about like Jared Allen, like all these guys. Like they have dudes, Mobley coming in. They have guys that can play. It's just yeah, it's not coming together yet. Like you said, it might be because of them being young. It might just be they don't have enough pieces yet. They don't have a lot of experience yet. That kind of thing. So I guess we have to see if they can take that step forward and I guess sustain it because I know last year they didn't really sustain that success. They kind of just fell out of it later into the season. But I guess, Nate, I'll just start with you. Any last thoughts on this division?
I guess about Cleveland, I think there might be a chance that I feel like they might be a little bit less streaky, I guess, just because of the kind of like some of the veteran guys that they're bringing over, like Ricky Rubio. I guess Lauri Markkanen, I don't know if you can technically call him a veteran, but he has been in the league for a few seasons. So I feel like in terms of leadership, there's even Kevin Love, who's been in the league for how long already. So I feel like they shouldn't be too streaky, at least in terms of experience. I guess now the question is just kind of how is the fit going to work? And I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. And I guess for Detroit, I think one thing that I kind of like is kind of like the coaching. I know like Dwayne Casey is a little bit overlooked now that he's not in the playoffs every year, but he's really good at I guess building young teams as a coach. So I think that's going to be something that we see Dwayne Casey do again with Detroit.
Yeah, for sure. He doesn't, I guess, give an easy path for young players. I guess he's more strict. He coaches them well. He sort of puts them in situations where they can succeed, and that's definitely a good thing that you want in a coach. And I guess bouncing it to you, Mete, any last thoughts about this division?
My thoughts for this division is that honestly, if Bucks aren't first, Bulls aren't second, and Pacers aren't third, I'd be really shocked. I think those are basically a lock in my opinion, and then 4 and 5 could change. But yeah, outside of that, I don't have too many thoughts. I like what Nate said about Dwayne Casey and building young teams. I definitely think he did it with the Raptors. He can do it again with the Pistons. And yeah, interesting division for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Those three, I know they aren't all locks for the playoffs, but they are definitely all three of them are going to be in the hunt. We know how tough we talked about how tough the Atlantic was last week. I think the other divisions, the Southeast division, we'll probably talk about that next week. There's a lot of, I guess, tough teams in that division too. So definitely, it's going to be a battle to get into the playoffs, especially for the Bulls and the Pacers. They're all going to be in the mix there with teams like we talked about New York, we talked about Philadelphia, all those teams battling out for the playoff spots. It looks like the East is getting stronger. And I don't know, Nate, what do you think about that?
Well, it's good because everyone's been talking for years about how weak the East is. I feel like it's a little bit of an exaggeration, but I think the East definitely is getting stronger, and that's always good for competition.
Yeah, for sure. I guess when we dive into next week, we'll talk about teams like Miami and others in that division. Like they have strong teams as well. So it's going to be a tougher East this year. It's a lot better when the league's balanced. I know we talked about with the NBA, the West is always like so strong. There's teams that wouldn't have made it in the West that would make it if they were in the East. We talk about NHL too. It's become the opposite there, where a lot of Eastern teams would have made the playoffs in the West because of how weak the West is. It's one of those things in leagues where You always have that debate, oh, should the top 16 teams be the playoff teams instead of having East and West? That's a whole other discussion. We won't get into that, but I guess it's just something to think about. When the conferences are balanced, it's always the best in any sport, and hopefully we'll see that more this year in the NBA. But yeah, that's going to be the end of Big Time Basketball. Make sure you check us out on Instagram and Twitter at FanFan Podcast. We've been posting picks for the NFL. Make sure you check them out. Check out this podcast on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts. Make sure you like, subscribe, share, hit the bell for notifications on YouTube, leave us some reviews, all that good stuff. And yeah, more division previews to come for Big Time Basketball. It was a great Central preview today, and we'll talk to you guys on the next episode.